Kia ora everybody, and welcome to our webinar, our TENS webinar for this month. This is the Garden to Table webinar, and we will start off today with a karakia. Mauri ora kia a mātou, arahina mātou kia mātou mahi, ki mihia he huarahi mo te kopapa o Mautoranga o Hangarau, a whina atu, a whina mai, te po e here ne I a mātou, Hui Taiki. And we'd like to welcome Victoria here today. She's here on our screens. Welcome along to the webinar. And we're very excited to have Victoria from Garden to Table here with us today. Victoria's been a teacher in New Zealand and overseas for over 20 years. So I'm saying 25, which is a bit like me, but 20 years, and is still teaching in primary schools 1 day a week. She's currently the curriculum manager for Garden to Table and is writing most of the lesson plans and the resources that go with that project and program, and it says here on my little notes there's a wide range of STEM different topics coming through, from soil to maths resources to nutrition and pollination. It sounds like a very diverse set of skills there coming through. Victoria is a very keen natural gardener and loves to cook as well, so fantastic for all our technologists out there, obsessed with vegetables and how they can normalize them in our society. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Victoria, and she will introduce our program for today.
Sure, thank you, Sarah, for that intro. I'll just expand on that a little. So, ko wai o, who am I? Ko Waipokoro taku kāinga tipu. I grew up in Waipokoro. Kei te whanganui a tara e noho ana e nai nei. So I live in Wellington. The rain's just arrived, which is good at the moment, but it may not be after a few days. He kai ako aho, I'm a teacher. I do CRT release in a school, and I get to practice out lots of different things across the school. So I work in a contributing primary, so I work with new entrants right up to year 6, and I give loads of different things a go in really different ways. So every week looks completely different. Kei Garden to Table aho e mahi ana. So 4 days a week I work for Garden to Table, and as Sarah said, normalizing vegetables and getting kids to be great vegetable eaters. There's lots of different ways to do that. My kids are great vegetable eaters, so if that's inspiration, I'll carry on talking. So tēnā tātou katoa. I'll just share my screen and go into my presentation. Here we go. Okay. So yes, I work for Garden to Table. We are a program in primary schools, but we also have some ECEs and some secondary schools, lots of intermediates. We are, for want of a better word, trying to restore those old-fashioned skills of sustainability and self-sufficiency and all the good wholesome stuff that comes from the kitchen and the garden and keeping stuff local. So many of those skills have been lost, and there's still expertise out in the community, but they're not normal. And so we want to make all of those skills normal, cooking from scratch, gardening at home, and all of those sort of things, because we can see the negative impacts right across society, socially, health-based and environmentally. So we are trying to put something in place that covers all of those things, and I'll touch on all of those things right through the presentation today, because we are literally multifaceted. There is just different ways of touching on all of these things, and it's all integrated. So we use the children, and I don't mean use, but we work with our children to make them take the ownership and become those change makers. We've got, we see some amazing things with children really taking action to make change in their communities for the better, using some of those Garden to Table skills. So our kaupapa is to empower those tamariki to grow, harvest, prepare and share great food, and I'll go through what that means in a Garden to Table context. So I've just got a little picture. You can't see the last word. So what are these tamariki doing? You can see already there's little bits of technology stuck in there, whether it's just a simple food tech preparing food, but there's a whole lot of different things. And we'll come back to this slide a little bit later when we've kind of reflected on some of those things and how Garden to Table works. But there's so many opportunities for learning in so many different ways, and it's a really great program for developing key competencies and really practicing in context. So everything's done with real life things, and the children are doing all the doing, and it's a really hands-on program. So the children can get stuck in and make that meaningful difference, but also learn while they're doing it, and half the time not know that they're learning. Which is often a bonus. So our 4 PO are grow, harvest, prepare and share, and they go right through our program. So every time a program happens, a session happens in school, they're running through every single one of those. There are children growing, harvesting, preparing and sharing. And I will talk through how that falls out and what learning goes into each one. What I'll do is I'll explain how Garden to Table works, and a little bit of the why of why we're doing it. And then I'll talk about some specific examples of how our people make it work. And when I say our people, I'm talking about some of our inspiring teachers that are doing some really cool things within their programs based on our program. So Garden to Table looks different in every school. We've got 250 schools across the country, and every school is unbelievably different, and there are different ways in and there are different outcomes, but there are beautiful things going on in every school. But I'll just share some of those, and I've picked out some technology teachers, some teachers who do different things really brilliantly, and I'll just show you some examples of that. And then I'll just go through a couple of other ways that we could link Garden to Table to our tech program. Now, just a quick disclaimer before I carry on. I'm not a tech expert. I'm a primary school teacher and a jack of all trades, like all teachers are. But I would call myself a master translator of complex material to children. So right at the moment, I am in the middle of writing a big piece about soil and soil health, and the material out there for kids is not terribly inspiring. So my job is to make it fun, make it pretty funky, and translate that complex stuff into something digestible for kids. And I'm not a soil expert. I'm also not an expert in any of the things that I do, but I do have skills of translation in the middle, which is, a teacher trait. So I'll carry on with our 4 PO and just explain what each of those look like in sessions. So how does Garden to Table work? We have 90-minute weekly sessions, half the class in the kitchen and half the class in the garden. All of our lessons are linked to the school curriculum, and the schools join up. It's not a one-size-fits-all program, and it's not a one-off program. It happens right through the school year. It happens every week, and it becomes an integral part of that school life and the school culture. It brings whānau into school. It does all sorts of pulling everything together, but having explained that, it looks different in every school. So not all schools do it in 90 minutes. Some can't fit it into their timetable like that, so they do it in a different way. Some of them don't split the class. Some of them do a double session, so they start off at the in the garden and then they move to the kitchen. It works differently in every school, and there's ways to make it work in any school. So Garden to Table in action. We start off in the garden. So often that's guided by a garden specialist. That could be a teacher, a teacher aide, a member of staff that comes in paid from the community, and in some schools it's a volunteer. So it works differently. Somebody who knows what they're talking about as far as the gardening goes. So the children are out in the garden, they're sowing seeds and looking after the soil. They're doing all of the things that would basically produce the kai for the kitchen, but we're trying to produce it in a sustainable way and learn best practice about how to grow great vegetables. If we do it best practice and we do it in a sustainable way, we'll get nutrient dense kai, which is what we're looking for as well. So we're trying to really upskill those kids in knowing how to grow great food. So they're doing all those jobs. There's no instant gratification in gardening. You have to plant and then you might wait 6 months and watch, wait, nurture, do all of those things, and then you can harvest. So that harvest is going straight to the kitchen. So that's the grow and then the harvest. They take the food to the kitchen. That is often led by a kitchen specialist who is sometimes a food tech teacher, often a classroom teacher, sometimes a librarian or teacher aide, in the same way as the kitchen specialist. So our children use real life tools. What we want them to do is transfer those skills to home, and if there's any specialist equipment, the skills that they learn at school don't transfer home as well. So we want them to stand at ordinary height benches, we want them to use real life tools, and we want to teach them how to do that safely. They need to measure and weigh, work as a team, all of those key competencies that I was talking about before. And then a really important part is the last pose. So we've done grow, harvest, prepare, and now we're up to share. Every single session ends with a sharing session where the gardeners and the kitchen and the cooks come together and they share that food. And this is the part where children have an opportunity for really great kōrero. They sit together around a table, they talk about the food. Often it encourages adventurous eating because so-and-so's eating that food and you might give it a go. There's no pressure to eat, but it just happens because everyone around you is having some food. If you don't gobble it quickly, someone else will ask you for your portion. And there's kind of soft peer pressure going on to just get stuck in and normalize those vegetables, even if they're green, even if they're unfamiliar foods. So and often we've got volunteers in there that we need to look after, we need to host, we might have visitors to the school, and we're thinking about who needs acknowledgement for their part in that meal, or who else needs help, or have we got extra food that who do we need to go and give that to? So who's helped us out? Maybe the caretaker in the school is helping out or often does things around the school. So shall we invite them to share that kai with us? Okay, so all of this is happening through an authentic learning context. So as I was saying before, they're real life experiences. We've got nothing happens without that context. Quite often in primary school, at least, we as teachers give our students some learning, and it's kind of, you could look at it and go, this is like really random that my teacher's talking about their dog or something. And this is based on the stuff that they've just seen in the garden, or based on the learning they just did in the kitchen, or what they're going to cook the next day. So it links to the core curriculum concepts, develops key competencies, as I was talking about, and then gets those children to do it themselves and share that learning with others, so they can learn from others, often in a tuakana taina style, but not always. But what we find, and the beauty of it, is often we find one student who might not shine in an academic way might suddenly come to the fore because they've got different skills and they're suddenly great at that. It often happens in the garden, but it does happen in the kitchen too. But you get a different student shining, and some of those are really beautiful moments. The other thing that I love about that sort of thing is often we're standing shoulder to shoulder. So it's not face to face, and you get really different sharing when you're working shoulder to shoulder in the garden with a child. They open up in a different way. It's the same as school camp and those kind of different experiences. When you actually are shoulder to shoulder with a kid, you get different conversations coming out. So we see all of those in our program. Okay, so I'm back to this slide, and hopefully by now you can kind of see some of those technology things coming out. I'll talk about making some of those raised beds. We've got schools that have done that in their hard tech programs, designed them on different Tinkercad programs and even on Canva before they've designed their garden, and all sorts of different things, but also that working together, key competencies again, and those skills that you need in the kitchen, whether it's following the design cycle or whether it's the food tech things, and just knowing the language, what is a calendar, for example, and all of those things that go with being safe in the kitchen and knowing your way around a kitchen and all of the different equipment that comes with that. So our children are absolutely involved with rich learning for life. So I'm going to put in an extra slide here about sustainability, because it's not necessarily technology. It absolutely can be. And there are so many different ways that Garden to Table ends up being a sustainable, teaching about sustainability in different enviro projects. So it's getting our kids to do the growing, but also thinking about seasonality, which is a really lost skill in our country. We do buy what the supermarket offers, and some of those skills, it means that we're losing a whole lot of those, sort of recognizing that we do have seasonal produce, and that's beautiful and cheap and fresh and should be eaten right now. So we're losing those skills, and we're trying to show kids that sort of thing. And then there's other things about you know, I was talking to a school the other day, and they had some apples falling on the ground, and the kids were just putting them in the compost because they had a worm on one side, or they didn't look like the supermarket apples. And the teacher was taking them back out of the compost and going, what do we do with this one? Okay, we wash it, we cut it in half, we cook it like this, and then we can absolutely eat that apple. So teaching kids that food waste is not something we're aiming for. There are ways to avoid food waste, and any waste that is produced can turn into that absolutely amazing gold in compost, which will help our soil health. So and then I talked about the ways that that corridor happens when people are sharing, and all those table manners that come with that sort of thing, where you have to offer somebody before yourself, and you get opportunities to say, what do you do when that last, I don't know, canapes on the plate, and learn those manners about, you know, social I don't know, societal norms, and whether they're reasonable, and what you should do in those sort of situations, and should you just gobble up that last one. And you get to have those little conversations with kids, which are really interesting, because they give you their perspective on them as well. So I'm going to talk through some technology projects. Like I said, we've got 250 schools across the country. Everyone runs a different program, but there are some incredible things going on across New Zealand, and they're all from very different places. So we've got programs that are begun from a food tech perspective, where they suddenly think, I need to incorporate some fresh kai in my garden, in my school. How can I grow something right here that I can use in the kitchen? And it often starts really small with a herb garden outside the kitchen, and then turns into a fully fledged program, and they end up doing food tech on the side of Garden to Table. So that's one way in. We've got other people who start from a hard materials place, and they suddenly need to have a context for learning, and they make their raised beds, and then they do all sorts of amazing things, which I'll go through some examples later on about making signs and all sorts of things. Some people are classroom teachers, and then it teaches a lot of their digital technology skills based on all sorts of things, whether it's making leaflets or labels or logos or signs or all sorts of different bits and pieces, but with real context driven. So the context is driven by Garden to Table, and there's no worry about, you know, what picture you're going to choose, because you're really focused into what you're making your label for, because you've got that context. So I'll go through some of these pictures. Over on the two left-hand sides, so this was a banana plant that was growing at Forest Hill School in Auckland. And this beautiful banana plant was growing beautifully, and then a storm hit and it came down, and the bananas weren't ready, and the children were absolutely devastated when they arrived at school. So they picked the bananas. You can still ripen them. They hung them in their shed to dry, and those bananas all ripened on their flower. I'm not sure how banana grows, living in Wellington. But then they had the big stem of the banana plant. So bananas are full of phosphorus. So they, potassium. They're full of potassium. They used a corer to cut holes out, and then they filled that banana plant with compost. And you can see that then they're growing there. I think they're brassica seedlings in there against the fence. So they didn't use anything, and they used those natural resources and those minerals and nutrients that are in that banana plant to make their brassicas thrive. In the third photo over, this photo comes from Half Moon Bay School, which is on Stewart Island, our southernmost school. They run a very different program because they are a small, isolated school, and they have got great environment, a great environment and great learning opportunities sitting on their doorstep. So they use their local curriculum all the time. So these kids are stirring a pot of fish fertilizer that they've made. So the kids were on the beach, and they get lots of visitors in Stewart Island who come over to fish for the day, and then they were throwing their fish frames. They didn't really know what to do with them, so they were putting them in the town bin, which is right outside the school. So they were like, this is gross, like this stinks, and it's ruining our local place because people don't have a place to put their fish frames. So the kids decided that they'd come up with a plan to fix this and come up with something to do to use these fish frames. So they contacted some people about making fish fertilizer. They got a grant to have a freezer at a drop-off point. So now those people who were leaving their fish frames on the beach or in the town bin can now go and put them in the freezer just outside the school, and then the kids make fertilizer for their garden from it. Now, they do amazing other things. So they have penguin boxes on the beach, and the kids do the monitoring of the penguin boxes through cameras that they've got installed into each box. And they found that there was no one to monitor those cameras over the summer holidays. So they asked for volunteers in their community who might take over one camera and monitor the penguin movements over the summer. But then those kids, those volunteers needed training. So what they did is they actually got their kids to write a digital manual into how to use and record and do all of the work that they would normally do. So you can see that one little piece of context, it turns into beautiful learning that they're doing in so many different ways. Unfortunately, underneath my last, where my people are, where I am, is a picture of Lily Rose. Now, Lily Rose is blowing the pukaya. She's from Tangata School up in Northland. She is blowing the pukaya to signal that it's the start of the kumara harvest. Last year, we released a kumara resource for our member schools, and it was linked to the Aotearoa New Zealand Histories curriculum, but it was looking at, so when Māori first came to New Zealand, they brought a tropical plant with them, which was a really significant kai producing plant that they needed to get growing, but New Zealand's not a tropical country, so they had to adapt their soil really quickly, and they used incredibly impressive ancient technologies to look at the soil and what they could do to keep the soil temperature really high, and using different structures and different ways of planting to modify their soil so that it was suitable for kumara. And you can still see some of those things at the Botanic Garden in Hamilton, and Kirikiriroa has got examples of how kumara used to be planted in a certain pattern and different ways of modifying your soil. So it takes students through the pūrākau, or the stories, the iwi stories that came about how kumara came to New Zealand, and then it goes through the technology used to change your soil to meet the needs of your to meet the needs of your kumara when you're first planting it out, because it needs to stay warm. And then working out different ways that you could use the knowledge of early Māori and take it into today's context and make something that would insulate your soil and really keep that soil warmth high. So you need lots of science skills in that, but you also need to be thinking through a technology lens. So those are just a couple of examples. I'm going to carry on talking. I don't have pictures for these particular examples, but I've got I'll share some more wonderful stories. So we've got at Hutt Intermediate down in Wellington, we've got Sally Gates, who's a food technology teacher. She last year set up a ghost kitchen. So her students were asked to develop a product using something from the school garden that they could sell to the rest of the school to eat for morning tea. And so they had 300 to 400 orders come through in the first, I think they took 6 weeks to do their project. They had 300 to 400 students to cater for, and the children needed to use the design thinking process to develop the product. They had to use something from the garden. They needed to have ecological packaging. They needed to have a logo. And then my favorite part of this is they put high-vis vests on and then delivered them by scooter to the classroom. So that's a pretty cool story about how you can use the design process in your food tech, but also link it to garden to table. We've got Wainui School, which is north of Auckland. They integrate garden to table. Now they're a rural school and they integrate garden to table into their technology program for their year 5 to 8. A few years ago, they did we produced a financial literacy unit. So they did an enterprise project where the students had to make a product for market. And it was the same sort of thing, but it was garden to table themed. So they had kids who were making chopping boards, baking food. It was based on, they needed to upcycle or recycle something. They had students making beeswax wraps. They grew seedlings. They sold seed bombs. They also had to make labels, make posters, make flyers, make a logo, and set up a brand for each of the products that they made. Now, the first year that they did that, they had to give their profits back to the school to fund the program for the next year. So they did that. And then the kids decided that they wanted to actually keep some of that money. So they set up, the following year, they did a similar project and decided to change the style. So the students were incentivized by money to make the best product, and they'd seen how it worked before. And so this time, the school made them pay for a stall. So it was real life learning in context, but those kids got to keep the profits that they made. And they said some of the kids made hundreds of dollars because they'd really researched into what a brand looks like and how to make a product that's fit for market. They've also got a zero food waste in their school policy. So they bokashi everything, and they've made their own bokashi bins and some of those sort of things. And then we've got a totally different example. We've got Jason Barkle at Tawa School in Wellington. Now, as I was saying before, he uses Tinkercad for his students to model and plan their gardens. They made their garden beds using pallets. They often do a design in Canva first, and using Canva in a completely different way from the way that I use it. So it's super cool to see his pictures. They make scale models, and they've got really into 3D printing and making labels and things with the 3D printer. We've got Emma Watts at Shotover Primary. Now she runs a student cafe every week, and she does some really cool stuff. She is a general technology teacher, so it's not just food tech, but she runs her student cafe through the food tech department, but she does lots of other stuff as well. And then we've got Colin at Marina View School. He has a TV studio every Thursday, and there's always a garden to table slot on that. his students have made garden tours using QR codes around the garden, and they keep on refining these things. They've also cut out this beautiful sign in their garden. I couldn't find a picture of it today, but it's called Vegecation, and all of the wood has been cut out, and it's all in the shape of vegetables to make the letters for vegetation, and it's just beautiful. But he also makes worm towers from scratch. He makes bokashi bins from scratch, insect hotels, and all sorts of other bits and pieces. And then we've also got a Hue project, which we're just starting off, where we've gathered some seeds to grow gourds, and we've shared them around the country. It's been such a wet season that our best gourd at the moment seems to be growing in Wanaka, which is unusual, but they've got a beautiful gourd down there. And then we're connecting with some Pacifica groups too, and some Māori groups, to see different stories about how they were used in the past, and also the artwork that to go on the outside. So there's a huge amount of learning through that, and learning for us as well, but that cultural connection for so many students, growing an often forgotten plant, and then what will we do with that next, and using that as a water container, or a storage container, or just as a beautiful decorative object. So those are just, it's a really super quick rundown of some of the beautiful things that are going on around the country. I've just got this quote here now. It's stuck underneath my thing. I'll just see if I can move my thing. I love seeing kids with their hands in the earth and hearing the questions as they start to make connections to their lives and living. So what I love about Garden to Table, and it doesn't matter if it's in a technology context or not, it is making those connections to make some of these ordinary things every day, because some of our ordinary has been forgotten, and we're trying to bring these skills back in so many different ways and make them ordinary again. And when you can connect things that happen at school to things that happen at home, you get that lasting learning, because you're making those connections across those things. So I'll apologize at this stage. When I talk about my work, I get very enthusiastic, so I talk very fast. But I've shown you some stuff. Now, I've probably made a few assumptions about what technology teachers want to see. So if I haven't covered something that you want to see, absolutely shout out and tell me what you'd like to hear examples of, because I can probably find something inside here that I can answer your question with.
Yeah, thanks, Victoria. So as Victoria was saying, that if there is a Q&A chat, so if anybody wants to pop any questions in there, then we can read them out, and obviously Victoria can answer any questions and things. I must say I'm overawed. I mean, I knew it was a great program, but just the amount of depth that's there, and the integration of curriculum as well. So not only just your technology, but also all the other curriculum subjects weaving in, as well as all those other skills that they bring to the students too. Out of interest, I mean, obviously you can see this working really, really well in primary. Do you get many secondary schools working with Garden to Table?
We certainly have some. We don't cover NCEA, but we've definitely got some who use it in their Hort program. It depends on who first comes to us and what their reasons for doing it is. So we've got schools who come to us for sustainability reasons, and they often come from the science teacher or the Hort teacher or the Enviro schools lead or something like that, and they come into the program in one direction, and then it kind of branches out from there and turns into its own thing. But we've got other ones who come from a health perspective or a re-engaging student perspective, or all sorts of different ones. And so it depends on your way in. Your journey through Garden to Table looks different depending on your way in, but the system on the inside is the same. It just sometimes morphs from there into this big beast that becomes really beautiful. yeah, but there's often a starting point. So often the food tech teachers are driven by nutrition, but not always. And so it really depends, on who's interested and where their sparks come from.
Awesome, thank you. We actually have a question here from Melinda that just says, what incredible variation between projects in schools. Is the Kumara resource you mentioned available for use?
Now it is, so I haven't mentioned this, we're a member school program. It's not a huge expense to sign up, but it's a deep program. So it's not a flit about the outside kind of program. It's a long-term commitment to start a garden and then maintain it each week. We see a lot of derelict gardens across New Zealand schools. So I would say most New Zealand schools have got or have had some sort of garden structure in the past. Now, often because they haven't done it from a coordinated program, they end up dropping off. And we want beautiful learning to come from our schools. So we don't want we want schools who can see that it's a commitment, and then the beautiful things can come from that. So to go back to the question, some of it is available on our website under taster resources on the outside. I think it's just got a little taster on there. I'm not sure whether it's got more than a recipe. But yes, it is available to member schools, the big resource.
Okay, and I think linking to that one, Tessa just says, maybe a silly question, but there's no silly questions, remember, we're educators here. What does a membership actually get the school? So do they receive planning, inspiration, a forum for sharing, support? So I think people are just wondering what's involved in the package when they actually become a member.
Okay, so Garden to Table don't run Garden to Table in a school. They help you run it because we want independent school programs that fit your community. So when you sign up to Garden to Table, you get access to our website, which has got hundreds of resources and some of those full lesson plans. So we've got like some pretty mighty lesson plans. We've got the big Kumara one, for example, another one on pollination, the soil one's coming out next month. We've got another one on nutrition, which is hopefully coming out on TKI for general release. That's my next project after this one. And other big ones. So we've got those resources. We also have hundreds of recipes and how-to guides for the garden and the kitchen. You get linked to a regional coordinator, so somebody local for you, who will help your program do school visits, come in and check that you're okay and make sure that you know what you're doing. We do curriculum training in schools where we teach all of the school to support the program and show them all of the resources that are on the website. So any teacher in a member school can use those use the websites and the website and the resources on the website. We also run network hui. So we've got our termly hui we've got a year 7-8 network. We've got a rural schools network. We've got a special schools network. So we run those hui termly to support those kind of unique garden to table things that are specific to a school or a teacher or something, but shared across the country. And then we send out 3 weekly pānui with lots of inspiration and stories from around the country. And then, is there anything else? Oh, so when you sign up, you also get you get access to a preferred suppliers list with discounts from some of our partners, but you also go into the draw when you sign up to win a starter pack. So we've got starter packs from Gardena that are full of tools. We've got starter packs from King's. Everyone gets a 10 pack of seeds, I think, from King Seeds. We've got other starter packs that come from, we've got like hose ones where you get a hose reel and things. We've got, and another one coming from a plant supplier where you might get a whole lot of seedlings.
Fantastic. There's a whole heap there for people, I think, for the sounds of things, which is amazing. In fact, people won't know where to start is a thing coming through.
So the place to start is to go to our website, and it tells you, which is gardentatable.org.nz, and then it answers those questions for you. So if you go to, I think it's a schools tab, and then it says, you know, how does it work? What does it cost? What does it look like? And it answers all of those questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Victoria. I don't think there are any more questions unless anybody else has any. I'll just give everyone just a few more seconds to see if anyone has any other questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to finish off with today?
No, I don't think so. I think I've covered everything on my notes. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's all the questions and Q&A. Thank you for coming along today and being part of our monthly TENS webinar. It's been awesome to hear this amazing project, and from a technology education point of view, I can definitely see the benefit of this in different schools and in the classroom for all tamariki, and also all their kākau, all our learners, whether they're teachers or students, I think, in the community too. And it could even go bigger and wider, like bring that local community in and get them involved as well. I mean, the opportunities here, I think, are quite diverse, and you can start small, and obviously you can do that low floor, high ceiling approach when you come to this project too, which is amazing. So yeah, once again, thank you very, very much. I'll just, if it's okay, share the screen for finishing off the 10. So before people do leave today, I'll just go back into sharing just a bit of an update from TENS ourselves. Please, we would really, really like your feedback on today's webinar, and to see how we can help you through TENS as well for future webinars, and help you and support you in the future. So we have this bit.ly here, which you can access, or just scan the QR code, and it takes you to our TENS feedback form for today's webinar. Also, just so people know, this video has been recorded thanks to the Garden to Table team, and it will be hosted on the TENS YouTube channel. And on there, it has got lots of different kinds of PLD webinars from lots of different projects and people across New Zealand to help different teachers and educators across Aotearoa. Next month, I'm just going to do a quick plug for our next webinar. So like technology is so diverse, we're jumping in a completely different space really for next month. And we have Julie from Grok, who is going to be looking at cyber skills and exploring that, and that is for primary and secondary teachers. So we'll be using that, and it's bringing in lots of industrial partners that they work with to actually help and develop their cyber skills safety course, which is free to use for teachers and students across the country. This will also be on the TENS website, so if you do miss out on the QR code there, you can also access it through the TENS webinar website too. And that's it for today. So I will finish off with a karakia once again. Thank you to Holly at ENZ, who's actually hosted us today, and thanks to Victoria from Garden to Table for sharing those amazing stories from the schools and what the project is about. It's been fantastic listening. Kia mātou katoa, kua mutu mātou a mātou mahi, me kaupapa hoki. Arahina mātou ka a mātou mahi anō. Kia whakatapua mātou ki ngā kaupapa me ngā mea e whakapono. Manakitia mai mātou. Kia ora everybody, and we hope to see you all again in the future.